I'm so happy to be here. Nice city, nice country. It's my first time in Hungary, and I'm so glad for this opportunity. Just to correct you, I'm not a researcher. I'm just a PhD candidate at the university. So my presentation is about the role of the Czech Parliament in the EU. I would first start with a brief history of the Czech parliamentarism. Since its independence, or more precisely the independence of Czechoslovakia, the country has its own legislative body. According to the first constitution, the interim constitution, it was a unicameral parliament. But according to 1920 constitution, a bicameral assembly was introduced. And the first Czechoslovak Republic was established. The Chamber of Deputies was the lower house, and the Senate was the upper house. The Chamber of Deputies was considered more important part of the parliament because it had more competitions, more powerful competitions, more powerful influence. Until the World War II, the first Czechoslovak Republic existed, and then after the World War and the communist Czechoslovakia was introduced, a new constitution was issued, and the unicameral National Assembly was established with 300 deputies. In 1960, a new communist constitution was established, and a Slovak National Council as a local legislative body was formed. So the country was still unitary. But according to the revision of the constitution from 1968, the country was federalized, and the bicameral Federal Assembly was introduced. 200 members, People's Assembly, and 150 members, Nations Assembly, and the Slovak and Czech National Council set as state legislative bodies. Since its independence, since the dissolution of the Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic has a bicameral parliament, very similar to the one from the first Czechoslovak Republic. The Chamber of Deputies is the lower chamber. It has 200 deputies. They are elected in 14 electoral districts using the proportional electoral system. There is also a threshold, and a method is used for estimating how many deputies every list is getting. It has a dominant position over the Senate in the legislative procedure. It can overrule the Senate's veto in this procedure. And also the government is only accountable to the lower chamber, but on the other side, only the lower chamber can be dissolved under certain circumstances by the president, not the Senate. So from that aspect, the Senate is more constant. Senate has 81 senators. Their term is 6 years. They are elected according to the majority system, and 1/3 of the senators are elected on every 2 years. Even if it is considered the weaker part of the parliament, it still has some significant roles, some significant competences. It cannot be dissolved, as I mentioned earlier, and it confirms the president's nominees for judges in constitutional court. In some cases, it has a strong position in the legislative procedure, especially when it comes to ratification of international agreements, because for this kind of acts, the consent of the both chambers is needed. I have a mistake here in there. It's not 1945, it's 1995. The Europe Agreement for Association was signed between the Czech Republic and the EU member states. And formally, the Czech Republic applied for EU membership in 1996, and 2 years after that, the accession negotiations started. And in this period, normally, Parliament had a huge role in harmonizing the Czech national law with the EU law. But I would like to talk especially about the Constitutional Act, the so-called Euro Amendment, which was issued in this period. It was issued in order to enable the constitutionality of the EU law, the EU treaties. According to this constitution, the international treaties ratified in the Czech Republic are part of the national legal system, so it is the principle of monism, and they enjoy priority over the bills, but not over the constitution. And according to this amendment, a transfer of the powers was established, was enabled. So with international agreement, national competences could be transferred to an international organization. But as I mentioned, these international agreements must be issued by both chambers of the parliament with 3/5 of the deputies and the senators. Also, the obligation for the government to inform the parliament. I also have a mistake here in the presentation, but never mind. About the parliament's legislative obligations from the EU membership was established, and I find it especially interesting that both chambers that also the constitutional court's permission is needed for ratifying the international agreements. The constitutional court can stop the ratification process. I am especially interested in constitutional courts, in constitutional identity, so I found this constitutional provision very, very interesting. Both chambers of the parliament have their own EU committee. The Chamber of Deputies CU committee is one of the 7 mandatory committees. It is formed according to the rules of procedure of the Chamber of Deputies. It has 2 subcommittees, one on migration and asylum policy and one on European funds, cross-border cooperation, and the green transition. It is composed of 20 members, and they are assisted in their work by a small secretariat and the Department of EU Affairs, which is part of the Czech Parliament's Parliamentary Institute. The main tasks of the Chamber of Deputies Committee is scrutinizing the EU's legislative process, monitoring the government's dealings with the European Union, participating in EU parliamentary cooperations, discussing staff nominations to various EU bodies, etc., etc. The Senate has also its own EU committee. It is not directly mentioned in its rules of procedure, but it exists and it has a significant role in the EU affairs. It has 8 members and they meet once or twice a month on a sessions. It is also the same applies to the Chamber of Deputies EU committee. They have 1 or 2 sessions per month approximately. The work of the Senate EU committee is supported by the Senate's Foreign Relations Department. It has some roles in examining the EU documents' impact on national legal order and their impact on the Czech natural and legal persons, as well as the respect of the subsidiarity principle. Also, this committee keeps a record of the EU documents which the Senate has received and a record of legislative proposals from the European Union and also the binding measures. But it is not the only committee in the Synod which has a jurisdictions in EU affairs. Also, the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense and Security, which is a totally different committee in the Senate, has some responsibilities and jurisdictions in the EU's common foreign and security policy. Now we will talk about the scrutinizing EU affairs in the Czech Republic, as both chambers of the Parliament of the Czech Parliament have significant role in this thing, but the lower chamber, the Chamber of Deputies, is dominant also in this matter. The government presents to the Parliament all the proposals for EU legislative acts, and also the government once a year should also should submit a report on the state and future on the EU and a report on the implementations of EU legislative acts. These reports are sent to the Senate. Another obligation for the government is giving its positions, as they are called, preliminary opinion on every EU draft legislative acts, and the Parliament after that discusses these government opinions. And also the Parliament chambers are allowed to pass resolutions on EU documents and government's positions, and these resolutions in fact should be considered by the EU bodies. Chamber of Deputies' role in the scrutinizing process. But I know, but I want to be as brief as possible and not to take some others' time. The Chamber of Deputies' role is scrutinizing. Before every Council of EU meetings or European Council meetings, a minister is present on the committee on the Chamber of Deputies committee in a EU session. task of the committee is to scrutinize the EU documents, not all of them, but some documents which it chooses, and the government opinions which are attached to the documents, as I mentioned earlier. Chamber's resolution on government opinions are taken into account only in procedural sense, and government doesn't change drastically its position after the Chamber of Deputies' resolutions, because both the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate can issue resolutions on government opinions, and they hypothetically they could issue totally different opinions, and it would be a little bit contradictory if the government accepts both chambers' positions. There is something called the parliamentary reserve in the literature. More precisely, the government's positions in certain areas before the government's positions in the EU Council of EU and European Council meetings in some areas are discussed by the Chamber of Deputies, and if the position is discussed by the Chamber, the government cannot take that position officially during this procedure, during the discussion in the Chamber of Deputies. The Chamber of Deputies doesn't have any time limit in which it should finish this discussion, so it can hypothetically block the government, and it could block, and it could the government in this case wouldn't be able to take a position in the European Council or Council of EU. Another really important scrutinizing tool which the Chamber of Deputies, the lower chamber, has is discussing some government's nominations for EU organs. For example, the Court of Justice, which is the Court of Justice suggestion, Czech judge in the Court of Justice is discussed by the Chamber of Deputies. Also, the suggestion for European Commissioner from the Czech Republic, and some representatives in the European Central Bank, in the European Investment Bank, etc., etc. But these suggestions cannot be sent to the EU institutions until the Chamber of Deputies finishes the discussion. We are coming to the Senate's role in scrutinizing the EU affairs. For all the EU documents sent to the Senate, the European Union unit, which is part of the Senate, writes a short summaries for a weekly overview of the new EU documents. And approximately, the senators select for debate around 10% of the roughly 700 documents picked each year. The Senate prefers to debate and to discuss more the communication documents, the green papers, and the strategic documents. It does not discuss the legislative proposals so often, and the committee of the Senate transfers the debate to the plenary session if the committee issues a resolution in which it recommends such a debate, or if group of 17 senators propose this. The extent to which a Senate resolution is in line with the government's position and how the government takes into account the Senate's resolutions is analyzed in detail each year by the Senate's European Union unit. So it has a weaker role in scrutinizing the EU affairs from the Chamber of Deputies, but still the Senate is significant player in this matter. I would conclude that the Czech Republic has more than a century tradition of parliamentarism. Even in the communism, the parliament was not the main player, if I may say. The Communist Party was the most powerful organization during that period, and the National Assembly was then just a voting machinery for the Communist Party's proposals. The contemporary Czech Republic is a typical example of a parliamentary democratic country, and it is a unitary republic, but it has a bicameral legislative body. The Chamber of Deputies is the more powerful one. This fact is also referring to the EU affairs. In the EU affairs, it has, as I mentioned earlier, it has more jurisdictions. Before the EU accession, the parliament played a significant role in harmonizing the Czech national law with the European Union law. Both chambers have EU committees, and both chambers play a significant role in the scrutinizing the affairs. And I would conclude with the fact that in my opinion, as I analyze this topic, the Czech Parliament has pretty huge influence on the government's positions in EU, especially in discussing the government's positions in the European Council and Council of EU, because without its permission, the government cannot take any single position in some areas, and it gives the Parliament pretty strong controlling mechanism over the government. Thank you for your attention.